Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm doing the Fall Time Cozy Time book tag, and I know I'm doing this tag kind of late because it's the end of November, so we're sort of like moving out of fall into winter, but you know, winter is also a cozy time, and I want to pretend like it's still fall. So we're gonna do the Fall Time Cozy Time book tag. This tag was created by Sam over at Sam's Nonsense, and I will link her original video below. I have some tea with me, so I am all ready to be cozy, and yeah, let's get into the questions. So the first question is, crunching leaves, the world is full of color. Choose a book that has reds, oranges, and yellows on the cover. And the book that I'm picking for this one is Foundryside by Robert Bennett Jackson. This is one that I actually haven't read yet. I just recently hauled it, and I am really excited to get into it, but also I love this cover so much, and it has this beautiful gradient of like oranges and yellows. It's not exactly autumnal, so even though the majority of this cover is black, I still thought that this fit the prompt well because it has these really vibrant oranges and yellows. The next question is, cozy sweater, it's finally cold enough to don warm, cozy clothing. What book gives you the warm fuzzies? So an old favorite that I recently reread is The Great Tree of Avalon, Child of the Dark Prophecy by T.A. Barron. This is the first in the Great Tree of Avalon trilogy, or since the rebranding, it's like the, I don't know, 7th book in the Merlin series. I don't remember, but I read it originally just as the first book in a trilogy, and this is actually a book that I recently reread the whole series, and I reviewed the series. I'll link the review below if you want to check it out. But this book is a really like classic fantasy quest, save the world, chosen one kind of story, so it has a lot of very like classic fantasy tropes to it, and those can be kind of comforting. And as I said, this is a very nostalgic series for me. I read this for the first time I think when I was like 12 or something, and I've reread it multiple times since then, so this is one that I feel like whenever I talk about this or review this, I think that my opinion of it is very biased. At this point, I feel like I can't even really tell if it's like a really good book or not, just because I have so many like nostalgic feelings attached to it that I'm just like so biased and I just can't judge it anymore. But this definitely gives me a very like warm, nostalgic feeling when I read it. The next question is, fall storm, the wind is howling and the rain is pounding. Choose your favorite book or genre that you would like to read on a stormy day. So for this one, my genre is always fantasy. I do read some other genres like science fiction and some nonfiction, classics and things like that once in a while, but like 98% of my reading, I think, is probably fantasy, and that is again what I will gravitate towards on a cold, rainy day. I want something that takes you on an adventure or brings you to a new world. On a stormy day, I want something that feels like a legend or a fairy tale or something that you could tell around the fire at night or something like that. So for this one, I could very easily say The Great Tree of Avalon again, because this is one that on like stormy days I have specifically picked up this series because it just has like the right feeling to me. But for the sake of variety, I am going to say the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy by Juliet Marillier. So at this point, I usually mention like a Juliet Marillier book in every single one of my tag videos because she is one of my all-time favorite authors, and I just always have to talk about her. But usually I talk about her Seven Waters series because that is my favorite, but for this one we're going with the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy. So the first one is Dreamer's Pool, the second is Tower of Thorns, and the third is Den of Wolves. So these all, first of all, have beautiful covers, but I am going to hold up Tower of Thorns because this was my favorite in the trilogy. What I really like about this series for a stormy day is, one, always Juliet Marillier's writing. Her writing is so beautiful, and I find her writing so easy to read, so immersive, and there's something so comforting about it to me that I just always love. I also love in her books, so there's so many themes of like nature, and this series the characters actually live like in a small cabin in the woods, so on like a stormy day where you're cooped up inside. I love a story that gives you really good like nature vibes, but also her stories are always so magical. In the story, the main characters Blackthorn and Grimm are under oath essentially to help anybody who requests their help, and that kind of pulls them into a few different scenarios, but in each book there is essentially a mystery that they have to solve, and that creates a nice parameter to the story, I think, and makes it a little bit more focused and feel a little bit more like an adventure, which I really like on a stormy day. And the next question is, cool crisp air, who's the coolest character you'd want to trade places with? Now for this one, I feel like everyone who does this tag who reads like science fiction and fantasy is always like, none of them, because they all live in terrible and terrifying worlds and I don't want to trade places. And that's how I feel about like most of these. Also, for this one that I'm picking, it's not necessarily that I think this is like the coolest character, but this is a character that I would want to trade places with. And that is Marion from The Forest Wife by Teresa Tomlinson. So this is like an old childhood favorite. It follows the story of Maid Marian from the Robin Hood story. So it's Robin Hood, but from the perspective of Maid Marian as she goes out into the woods and becomes the forest wife, who is this woman who lives in the forest and is a healer for the people who live in the forest or who live nearby who can't afford like doctors or traditional healers. And she becomes very important to their community. And I loved this book so much when I was little. This was like so integral to my like childhood. And while she doesn't live in the best world, because it's Robin Hood, and so there's, you know, Nottingham and the sheriff of Nottingham who's terrible and everyone is treated terribly and all of that stuff. But like, I want to live in the woods. That's what we're getting at here. I would want to trade places with her in terms of like, I want to have like a cool little house to live in the woods and like be a healer and just have lots of trees and plants around me, and I'd just be so happy. I just want to live in the woods. Next we have Hot Apple Cider. What underhyped book do you want to see become the next biggest, hottest thing? And for this, I am picking The Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley Doyle. And I don't know if I necessarily want this to become like the next biggest, hottest thing, but I do think it's an underhyped book. Like, this one came out in 2017, I think, and I saw a lot of people haul it, and a lot of people were like excited about it because it has like a pretty cover and it has a cool title and all of this. But then I saw like almost nobody read it and reviewed it. Like, no one talks about it. And I really enjoyed this book. It's very atmospheric. It has just this wonderful atmosphere that's so magical and eerie. It just has this like haunting but like beautiful feel to it. Another one that a lot of it takes place out in the woods. So have we like noticed a theme in the books that I pick? But yeah, this one, I definitely think it's underhyped. I don't know if it's necessarily one that should become the next biggest, hottest thing, but I do think it's one that's really worth reading and that more people should talk about. And next we have Coats, Scarves, and Mittens. The weather has turned cold and it's time to cover up. What's the most embarrassing book cover you own that you would like to keep hidden in public? So for this one, there are quite a few covers that I could probably choose from. Fantasy has some real cheesy covers. One is the 500 Kingdoms series by Mercedes Lackey. There we go. This is the first one. This is the Fairy Godmother. I don't know if it's necessarily like the worst of the series, but they all pretty much look like this. And these are just like very, very cheesy covers. And next we have Pumpkin Spice. What's your favorite fall time comfort foods? And I don't know if I have really specific fall time comfort foods. I do know that in the fall and winter, I do start drinking more tea. I'm not really a big tea drinker in general, and I put a lot of milk and sugar in my tea if I'm drinking black tea, which this is Earl Grey with lots of sugar and oat milk in it. But yeah, in the fall and winter, I do start drinking more tea. I do really love pumpkin pie. I don't know, I get really into like curries and like warm foods like that. So that is all for the fall time cozy time book tag. I was not tagged to do this, I just felt like doing it, so I'm not really going to be tagging anyone specific, but if you would like to do this tag, do it. I am tagging you. There you go. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.